In this video, I will guide you through the steps I take from start to finish to airbrush my Gunpla. Let's paint. NewType is a fast and reliable source of Gunpla supplies in the US. For my fellow Canadians, Argama Hobby offers the largest stock of kits, tools, and paints. I've developed this workflow over more than 10 years of painting Gunpla. It works well for me, but there is no right or only way. Different types of kits or paint jobs may require adjustments. Consider this a general guide for painting Bandai plastic kits in original colors, the approach I generally recommend beginners start with. Unless specified, I paint with my Mr. Hobby Procon Boy 0.3 airbrush, which has an air pressure adjustment valve. My compressor is set to 25 psi, and I generally thin lacquer paints to a maximum thinner consistency. For example, Gaia paints are 1 paint to 1.5 thinner. I thin most of my paints with leveling thinner. You can find many of the products you see in this video on my Amazon storefront. Many people pre-assemble before painting for various reasons: enjoying the assembly, getting familiar with the kit, or identifying seam lines. This was unexpectedly controversial, but I no longer pre-assemble Bandai plastic kits. I paint in original colors. I would pre-assemble for customizations, PG Unleashed, third-party kits that require glue, or resin kits. Why? 1, I hate disassembly. Assembling and disassembling feels like wasted time, and some parts are hard to remove without breaking. 2, you should already be comfortable with Gunpla assembly before painting. If not, practice straight builds until you can assemble without runner numbers. 3, I don't use pre-assembly to find seam lines. I'll tell you how later. Take note of my suggestions and maybe make it a future goal. Many people do pre-assemble and some group by body parts. You can try that. I learned to paint without pre-assembly from Cookie, who explained that's how Korean commission painters avoid wasting time. My first attempt was really challenging, but I persisted and now I can't go back to pre- and disassembly. I cut parts off the runners, keeping them organized by runner letters only. To be honest, even this is for show to help beginners on YouTube. In practice, I only categorize the inner frame by runner letters. Outer armor is grouped simply by color because these parts are handled more for panel lines, enamel hand painting, and decals. It's harder to keep them constantly organized. This works well because there are fewer outer armor parts and they are larger and easier to identify. With parts cut, I check for seam lines using pictures and video reviews online. They're usually on weapons, shoulders, or knees. I assemble only these parts and remove seam lines using cement and sanding. If a seam line can't be removed without masking, decide. Can you accept the seam line because it's a light build, or could it be considered the design? Or will you do the work and mask and paint it? I rarely rescribe every panel line on Bandai kits painted in original colors. It's usually a light, fun build for me. However, if you do, rescribing deepens panel lines, improves accent flow, and helps your art knife cut smoothly when masking. Do this before sanding so accidental scratches can be removed in the next stage. Sanding is my least favorite part, but necessary. I usually start with a 400 stick to remove nubs and a 1000 sponge to smooth the surface. You can experiment with these 3 stages: 400, 600 to 800, and 1000 to 2000 grits based on your preferences. Take note of what actually shows up after primer and adjust accordingly. I do sand almost every part. With experience, you'll identify which inner frame pieces won't likely show up. Inner frame painted metallic can be sanded once with a 400 grit because shiny pigments hide minor scratches. I give most parts a quick pass with a soft grit 1000 sponge to remove possible mold release and give a rough surface for primer to latch onto. That's why I don't wash Bandai parts, because sanding removes mold release more effectively and prevents paint flaking or peeling off when masking. While I do make a preliminary plan first, I test colors on spoons after sanding because I like having time to settle on a paint scheme as I work with the parts. I get closer and inspired by the kit and see how much work it'll require. I usually choose colors in this order: outer armor, inner frame, and detail colors. If outer armor has multiple colors, settle on the main color first, then set the secondary and inner frame color next to it to check compatibility. Detail colors are added using masking or enamel hand painting, and I find it easier to decide on them later once the main colors are on the actual kit. I organized clipped parts into 3 groups: weapons, if big and complex, inner frame, and outer armor. If there are different colors within each group, they will be lined up accordingly. I clip from small to large to minimize constantly adjusting air pressure for differently sized parts as I paint. I try to paint in batches of the same color. When I had lots of space and foam, I primed every part first. Primer is like pouring concrete on a soft foundation and then building your house on top. This analogy from Cookie really helped me understand its purpose. Sanding all surfaces helps primer grip the plastic better. Use any 1000 to 1500 surfacer. I use whatever is cheap and available in Canada. I typically apply a dry tacky layer, then 2 wet layers. Many brands sell surfacer instead of primer. It's slightly thicker and often functions as both a primer and filler, filling in things like soft scratches. Different color surfacer can also cover the original plastic color or provide an underlying tone. This is especially helpful for brighter colors. For example, many people use a pink or yellow surfacer under yellow to give it a warmer or more vibrant base color. White surfacer is often used to cover gray primer because white paint typically has lower coverage and may otherwise require many layers. If your surfacer has priming function, you can skip primer. If space or foam is limited and you cannot prime every part first, paint in the following order. Complete big or complicated weapons first to avoid weapon fatigue. It's a real thing. Otherwise, batch inner frame and outer armor next. I paint inner frame first. They rarely need detail work. I like having them done and out of the way. For metallic inner frame, paint a gloss black first. A tacky coat, then 2 wet layers. This enhances the shine and intensity of the metallic. You want enough paint so it won't chip easily, but not so many layers that the joints become too thick to articulate. While other colors are applied wet, metallic paints are sprayed dry, like a tacky coat. That is, hold your airbrush further away, use higher air pressure, and release less paint. Spray 2 to 4 light layers, depending on the intensity you want. If painting metallics under a candy or clear coat, you can spray them more wet for maximum brightness. Outer armor comes next, starting with the main color. Paint looks different on spoons than on parts, so if it turns out you don't like the color, make your adjustments here. Then move on to the secondary colors. Color paints are thinner than surfacer and gloss black, and lay on primer more easily. So I skip the tacky coat and paint a light coat, then 2 to 3 wet coats to get the color I want. In the first layer, make sure you cover details and edges, where paint doesn't hit as easily. Your goal is even color coverage. The color should look the same on one part and across all parts. For candy paints, I paint the outer armor first because they require many layers and more drying time. As they dry, I paint the inner frame. I paint white last. It's harder to get consistent intensity. Paint them after you've practiced with the colors and in one sitting if possible, so the intensity and number of layers are consistent. Generally, darker colors are easier to paint, brighter colors are a bit harder. Masking for color separation can make your kit look more realistic and add visual interest. Before masking, ensure the paint is fully cured. Depending on how many layers you applied, let it dry for 8 hours or overnight. Only mask parts you can paint the same day. Over time, tape can lift, increasing the risk of overspray. If overspray happens, either remask to fix it or dab a tiny bit of lacquer paint on the area for a quick fix with a toothpick or fine-tipped brush. Do not over-apply lacquer over lacquer by hand, as it will melt the underlying paint. Masking can be complex in theory, but easy in practice. After painting, we move to non-lacquer details: panel line accent, enamel hand painting, and decals. Even I sometimes mix up the order. The key is to start from the lowest surface level and work your way up. Adding panel line accent darkens and emphasizes panel lines. Panel line accent is an enamel paint, so it is weaker than lacquer and will not melt it. It is also easily erasable with enamel thinner, unlike acrylics. Allow it some time to dry before erasing for cleaner results. Bandai kits don't always have deep panel lines. If you choose not to rescribe, accent may not flow well through them. It can be a bit of a learning process at first, but I've learned to identify which panel lines it will flow well in and apply it only to those. Trying to apply accent to shallow panel lines on awkward details can make the kit look messy and require extra cleanup. Panel line accent comes first because if the lines are deep enough, it won't be easily erased once dry. Next is enamel hand painting, which has a lot of potential if you can develop an eye for which parts are easier or harder to hand paint, and it can save time from masking. It will never be as smooth as airbrushed details, but can come very close with good application and a top coat. I've covered this topic extensively in multiple videos. The key points are: use toothpicks for flat surfaces, a brush for more difficult details, dab instead of stroke to avoid brush marks, and use your pinky as a stabilizer. Use a Q-tip dipped in enamel thinner for larger corrections and a small brush for smaller ones. On a painted kit, apply water slide decals for minimal film, the thick border you get from stickers. Wet the decal, transfer it over some Mark Fit or decal glue, and remove excess water with a Q-tip. Applying decals on parts without assembly or runner numbers can be tricky. Like finding parts without numbers, you need to identify them in the manual or a kit photo. Mistakes are easy when decals differ for left and right pieces. Remember how I recommended practicing straight builds without runner numbers? After that, try hand painting and applying decals the same way. Cut the parts, organize by runner letters, then paint details and apply stickers before final assembly. Practicing this on a straight build first helps you avoid errors on a painted kit. Top coat protects your paint and decals. It comes in flat, semi-gloss, or gloss. There are two ways to top coat: by individual pieces or assembled portions, like a whole arm, leg, or body. I've tried both and stick to top coating individual parts, which gives the most even coverage. What are the benefits of top coating assembled parts, say a leg? It's faster. Assembling before top coat helps you apply decals more easily. Parts are less thick without top coat, making assembly easier. The downside is that to get full coverage on an articulated piece, you must paint, articulate, and spot paint again. That is, paint the leg straight, bend it, then paint again. This requires waiting for the paint to dry between repositioning and may still not give full coverage. However, it can be a good option for beginners or light builds. Try both methods and see what works best for you. When parts are fully dry, it's now time to assemble. I generally assemble the weapons, leg, body, arms, and head. Finishing the weapons get the big pieces out of the way. Working my way from bottom up helps me make stability adjustments as I go. Paint causes pegs and joints to thicken, so you may need to do some modifications. Don't be afraid to cut or scrape pegs to get parts to fit. Painted kits are a display piece, not a movable toy. Chipping does happen very easily during final assembly or posing. There are a variety of ways to fix this. either by carefully touching up with a toothpick or brush, masking to repaint, or sanding down the whole part to start over. I've used all of these methods, and which one you choose depends on the complexity, visibility of the area, and the mental sanity you have left. When you first start airbrushing, paint smaller, round, less detailed kits, like a petite bear guy. They're like spoons in kit form. Avoid large, flat, detailed kits, like a new Gundam Verka, which can overwhelm beginners. I'm emphasizing this point from How to Airbrush Gunpla because it's how overly ambitious beginners get disheartened. You'll learn more by completing several smaller kits and improving each one than by finishing one complex kit to a subpar standard. As a beginner, you can prevent mistakes, but you can persist and learn how to fix them. Your kit is going to be a bit rough around the edges, but that's what helps you grow and develop. Aim for completion, not perfection. Did you know that 73% of viewers are not subscribed? If you enjoy my content, the easiest way for you to support this channel is to become a subscriber. I've also recently opened YouTube memberships. Members get evolving badges and custom emotes I designed to reflect us as Gunpla painters, plus exclusive live stream replays, all right here on YouTube. For those who want more in-depth content, my Patreon supporters receive perks like unedited, real-time work-in-progress videos and access to my private Discord server. Thank you so much to everyone supporting in any way. It truly helps me keep creating and means the world to me. Happy building, everyone.